Back in April we spoke to David Hickey. And David used to be the head of the National Kidney and Pancreas Transplant Unit in Beaumont. He retired in January, and since then nobody has replaced him. And we were talking in April about what's going to be the knock-on effect of that. Well, Ciara Kelly's story is probably the result of David Hickey not being replaced. And both David and Ciara join me in studio. Good afternoon to you both.
Hi.
Hi, Ray.
So, Ciara, you're a patient of David's?
I am, yep.
Yeah, so you got a lovely spanking new pancreas when?
Back in April of 2009.
All right. And everything went fine at the start?
Fantastic. Three and a half years of bliss. Absolute bliss, yeah.
Prior to that, you had a sort of terrible life, did you? Well, it was...
Well, not all the time. I'm diabetic. I'm diabetic approximately 26 years, and 10 years ago I lost all my hypoglycemic awareness, which means when my blood sugars drop, I wouldn't be aware they're dropping. So basically I'd pass out. Then a couple of years later it deteriorated a lot more in that the awareness had gone entirely. The amount of low blood sugars I would have would increase, and on top of that I would have very dramatic swings in blood sugars. All stuff that's not supposed to happen. This is all due to diabetes, but it's stuff that doesn't happen in, let's say, everyday diabetes.
And the pancreas is the internal organ that regulates all of that.
The pancreas produces the insulin. And in diabetes, your pancreas doesn't produce insulin or doesn't produce enough insulin.
Okay, so you got your new pancreas, and I believe that it was a Good Friday, but for you it was a Great Friday.
Great Friday, yeah, it was good. Yeah, I've always referred to it since then that it's now named. It's even still now. It's Great Friday.
And there's an immediate effect, is there?
Immediate. One thing actually that I've always said, I remember when I had my pancreas, the next morning, it wasn't actually the next morning, it would have been the following morning again, but to me it was the next morning because it was the first thing I remember. I remember the nurse coming in, and this was April, and she opened the blinds, and it was an absolute glorious day. The sun was splitting the skies. It was the most nicest day ever. But later on, when I looked out the window, it wasn't like that. And when I said that to somebody, they were like, "That wasn't a sunny day today." Like, it was in my head. But it just goes to show the psychological effect of you get your transplant. It's a medical thing, but it's a psychological thing as well. You have your life, you have your new life, and everything is perfect.
And it was going well for 3.5 years.
3.5 years, yeah. Then I had pancreatitis in May of 2012. I wasn't too well for a while after that. Up and down a bit, and then in the end of June of 2012 I was admitted to Beaumont. My blood sugar started to go up, and it was at that stage where my pancreas started to reject. I was in hospital for 4 weeks. During that time, Mr. Hickey and his team done everything they could to try save the organ, but unfortunately the organ rejected, and I was straight back on insulin straight away. Now, to be honest, it was devastating losing the organ, but I kind of thought to myself, well, I've had 3.5 great years. Be grateful, because I thought, and the endocrinologist thought as well, being diabetic, being free of diabetes for the 3.5 years would get the awareness back, so that when my blood sugars were dropping, I would know they were dropping, I wouldn't have this problem. But unfortunately, after a few days, I knew that wasn't the case, because again, the sugars were dropping and I didn't know.
So you have a sort of a redundant pancreas inside your body.
I've two. I have.
Two. Yes, you've two.
I'm greedy.
You've two. And you're looking for a third one.
I told you I was greedy. I have the one I was born with, my bogey pancreas, as I call it.
And your transplant pancreas.
And then, my gift of life pancreas.
That your body has rejected now.
Yeah, my body has rejected that, so that's not working at the moment, but it's still in place. But at this stage, I've been told it's shriveled up. It's not in use, but it's still there.
So then you were on the list for a pancreatic transplant.
Yeah.
Okay. When did you find out that David Hickey was retiring and that list had ended?
Well, I found out that Mr. Hickey was retiring back in December. I was actually in with Mr. Hickey the last day of clinic. And I found out then that I think I'd found out a couple of weeks beforehand, because I'm lucky in the sense that I know somebody working in the hospital. So
insider knowledge.
Yeah. So I was given the heads up on it. So I knew he was retiring, but I didn't think for an instant that the whole programme was going to be just abolished. There's another 2 surgeons up there, and I was under the impression that Mr. Hickey was going to continue on because we knew that he had offered to stay on for longer to train up these 2 surgeons. I didn't think for a minute at that moment.
And we'll get to David in a minute, but he told me back in April that he had offered to stay on for 2 years to mentor them. Just staying with you, so you've Gavin and Liam, who are 9 and 7. Your husband, what's his name?
Philip.
He works full time.
Yeah.
So because of your situation now, you pass out how regularly?
It's hard to say. There's no pattern to it. Some days it could be 3 or 4 times.
Oh, that regularly?
Yeah,
Right.
but then in saying that, I could have a great week, and I might only pass out once in a week.
Okay.
You know, there's no rhyme or reason. There's no pattern.
And then you have to get a shot.
And then I have to get. Well, it's not just as simple as a shot. It's not like an insulin or an EpiPen where it's preloaded. I think it would actually be a lot easier if it was, where it's just a matter of a jab, press a button. It's not like that. It's a solution. It's a syringe with a liquid in it, and a vial of powder. It has to be made up. And then
At the moment, it can't be pre-prepared.
No, it can't be.
Okay.
No.
And Gavin and Liam have to do that.
Yeah, they've been doing that for the last 3 years.
And they're great lads.
They are great. They're fantastic, but they shouldn't have to do that.
No,
they're only kids. They shouldn't have to do that.
Okay. Ciara and David are with us, and we just have to take a quick break and go to the studios of Radio and the Gaeltachta in Costla for Nocht. Gurmagad Fanula, Gurmagad, 51551 for your text. You can send us emails to ray@rte.ie. Now, when we were in the Nocht with Fanula there, Ciara had to get her glucometer. Is that what it's called out? Yeah. So how many times a day would you have to do that?
Approximately every 20 to 30 minutes.
Right, and that's to measure your sugar levels?
Yes, check the sugars, yeah.
So what was the reading there?
8.8. Now, that for a regular textbook diabetic is perfect, maybe a little bit on the high side, but I need to keep mine above 12 because they drop so suddenly, so it's a little bit on the low side for me. But in saying that, I'm on my 4th bottle of Lucozade in the last half hour.
Okay. David Hickey, retired head of National Kidney and Pancreas Transplant Unit in Beaumont. So Ciara, you've heard Ciara's story, you were very familiar with that. So you were telling us when you were in April that there was going to be a fallout if something wasn't done, and nothing has been done.
Nothing has been done, and fortunately enough, the patients have taken the initiative themselves because they realise that if they wait for things to happen, some of them aren't going to be around. So they organised a meeting last Saturday that I was very happy to help them with, and we got Liberty Hall from Jack O'Connor, and the response was amazing. We've had a huge response from the public, thanks to shows like yourself as well, Ray.
Yeah. But just tell people, so there was when you were here in April, there was 13 people on a waiting list for a pancreatic transplant.
Yep.
Okay. Now, my understanding is you were the only person in Ireland who could do that.
Yeah.
And they haven't replaced you.
And, you know, the spin is that I retired all of a sudden and left them in a lurch. It's been known for 30 years when I was going to retire. I've been writing to different people in the Department of Health and the ministries and the HSE since 1995. I've provided all sorts of reports for them. I actually went in to see the Chief Medical Officer of the Department of Health there last month, and Pauline, his secretary, was there with the Dublin team above her desk saying, "You won't believe this, but it's 15 years to the day when you were in here looking to get this thing sorted out." So in spite of all the efforts, a blind eye has been turned to this, and this group of patients, not only have they, as a programme, stopped, but they haven't even been told it's been stopped until very recently, until they actually started kicking up when I came back from Cuba in April and your show actually broadcasted this. I mean, some people found out this week, listening to Ciara on the radio, that there was no waiting. The waiting list they were on has been abandoned.
I know, Ciara, this is tough for you because the prognosis is quite poor, isn't it?
It's very poor. I mean, but not only is survival poor, right, but people's lives deteriorate very quickly on dialysis. I mean, and Ciara will tell you that you're heparinized, so it bleeds into their eyes, so their vision deteriorates very quickly. It's not a great life for a diabetic. It's not a great life for anyone, but for a diabetic, it is the ideal situation for a diabetic with renal failure is a kidney pancreas transplant before you go on dialysis. That's the gold standard for treatment. Okay.
So what can happen for somebody like Ciara now, David?
Well, in my opinion, there are 4 things that should be done immediately. Number 1, people like Ciara on the waiting list have to be met individually and explained what their choices are. and that they are entitled, legally entitled, morally entitled, and spiritually entitled to get a pancreas transplant done in another jurisdiction. And that is not as difficult as the people will make it sound. If a pancreas transplant comes up that's suitable for this patient, the pancreas, kidney, and the patient can go to the UK and have their transplant.
But I was listening somewhere. It has to be. It only lasts for 24 hours. So that's all doable, is it?
Absolutely, simply. I mean, London is closer than Donegal.
Yes. Okay.
Okay.
So
that's number one.
Some poor soul dies.
Yes, and we have great donor rates, and
yes.
we're very lucky that we have that rate.
Okay, there's a match with Kira.
Yeah.
Everything is arranged. Everybody goes over to a London hospital and it's done there.
It's done there.
Okay,
yeah.
Right, that's right. And under the, what's it called there? I had it there, the treatment abroad scheme.
Yeah, well, I mean,
Kira's entitled to that.
Kira's entitled to that under the treatment abroad scheme, but also under the actually EU legislation. If a country cannot provide this service, on the furnishing of a letter from the clinician looking after the patient, the government can get an E112 form signed, and the treatment is free in that jurisdiction. Okay. Obviously, you have to pick up the tab for travel and that sort of stuff, but it's free.
Okay, that's the first thing. You said there were 4.
Number 2, the patients who are being followed at the moment, they need a point of contact. We have 85 people who've been pancreas transplanted in the past with functioning transplants. They have been left with no resource. Now, what we had established in Beaumont is if someone felt unwell in Westport, they rang one of our coordinators who were on 24/7 and they got advice. And if it was just about they got a new medication from their GP, is it safe to take it? They say, yes, that is perfect. No, don't take that one. It interacts with some of the immunosuppressions. If they had a fever, they were told, come straight to Beaumont Hospital and you'll be admitted to the transplant unit. Now they're being advised to go to their local emergency room or their local nephrologist. Now, nephrologists work very hard and they're not there usually at weekends. So you go into an emergency room, and we know plenty from shows like your own what life in an emergency room like. You could be 3 or 4 days there if it's a Beaumont. Beside people with all sorts of infections, it's not a zone for
and just to make it clear to people, because of the drugs you're on to stop rejection, you wouldn't be on those anymore. Are you still on them?
No, recently they've been stopped.
Oh yeah, but people who have transplants or are waiting, their immune system is very low.
It's toned down, Ray, so they don't reject the graft.
Yes, that's it.
But it leaves them susceptible to opportunistic infections.
Right, so a hospital isn't a good place for them, really.
Yeah.
So that's number 2.
Number 2
is the point of contact. That's
okay.
The point of contact.
Number 3, the point of contact need to be translated into immediate admission to a transplant unit. If it's Vincent's where the transplant unit, it has to be St. Vincent's. If Beaumont are going to hang on to it for the moment in the transition, it has to be Beaumont. Okay. But they have to be guaranteed access to that, and that's been the way it has up to last January. Okay. And number 4, they want a definite timeline on when this is going to happen. Okay. And in the interim, new patients, they're going to start evaluating patients at the end of this month to put on a list that doesn't exist. The new patients going on the list from the end of July have to be liaised with the Imperial College in London and go on the list there.
How do you feel personally, David? Do you feel a certain responsibility? And I know it's, none of this is your fault.
Yep.
But do you feel some sort of personal responsibility?
I absolutely feel. I feel very hard for these patients because, I have dealt with a donor family who have donated a pancreas to these people. I've then dealt with a patient and I've seen them at least 6 times a year for the last 20 years, some of these. So they're sort of like my family. And I offered to have a seamless transition in Beaumont Hospital for this, and it wasn't accepted. And the reason I'm involved in this now is the patients have asked me, the patients I've operated on in the past, the patients who feel that I have done a good job for them, they have asked me to continue this. I could be fishing in Cuba at the moment.
Right, but you're here.
I am absolutely dedicated to this group of people because they have been heroic events in my life.
You were saying the last time you will be doing transplants in Cuba, mentioned, and in the Sudan.
Yeah.
And not in your home country.
Yeah.
Right.
It's like the wild geese, Ray. Patrick Sarsfield's great word, that this blood was for Ireland.
I was listening back to the interview. You probably heard him, Ciara, when he was on. And I still don't understand. Okay, you took early retirement. You offered to do the 2 years. And was it a bad falling out?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, it was a bad falling out.
Yeah. Right. Beaumont, there's a saying that nothing fails in Ireland like success. And if you have time, I can just give a very brief reason how this whole programme started. In 1992, patients were asking me about it. So I went to Michael McClune, Donegal footballer who was CEO in Beaumont. And I told him about it. He said, well, there's two ways of doing this, Dave, he says. You form a committee, you write a report. I take the report and I go into the department. The department sends it back with a few corrections. I send it back again. Then we go to the finance. He said, you go round and round and round and round in circles and you'll never get it done. The other way, he says, you go and do it and I'll support you, but you'll never get it funded or resourced. And the problem is, and the problem has traditionally been, there have been no medical or surgical initiatives in this country that weren't driven by a medical guy who decided to do it on his own. Morris Nelligan in heart, Niall O'Higgins in liver, Eddie Tempney and Sean McCann in bone marrow. These guys took time off,
and you and
went to do
Pancras.
it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Where does this leave Ciara now? And I know you said there are four things that are...
They need. Well, for a start, I mean, Ciara unfortunately may have missed 15 pancreases that weren't procured this year and that could have been her chance. I mean,
So what has happened to those pancreas?
they're not used. They're not taken.
used?
No.
They're not exported?
They're not exported. No,
they're just...
They
were available, but they weren't used?
Yes, yeah. There's been 15 suitable
15?
patients. Yeah.
That must hit hard, does it, Ciara?
Yeah.
To know that?
Yeah, it's...
when you hear it like that?
That could have been your chance of life.
Yeah. So... do you push now for a treatment aboard scheme?
Ciara's situation is very complex. Because of the level of antibodies she has, Ray, she needs to undergo a desensitization program, which is very hard. And that's one of the reasons she can't have it done here, is because there's no waiting list, there's no pancreas transplant. It's very, very heavy treatment, but it's a sort of it's like chemotherapy. It removes all the antibodies from your blood, and then you get a window of opportunity that lasts for a month. And you go on the list in every place to try and get a pancreas. And if a pancreas turns up in that month, you get transplanted.
And if you were still doing what you did, Ciara wouldn't be in this.
Well, I mean, she has 98% antibodies, and what that means that if you have 100 donors, there's only 2 of those donors that she's suitable for at the moment.
Okay. Tell that woman her sons will grow up to be real men who will have tolerance for others, and she should be proud of them. That's I'm type 1 diabetic. Glycogen, is it available in a tube, can be rubbed on gums to help bring back someone who has collapsed? This may help discover an idea. Well, you're gone past that.
I've been there, done that.
Very interesting, your conversation with pancreas transplants. Can you ask doctor, I've had pancreatitis, is it pancreatitis, twice due to having gallstones. I was very sick, fine now. Am I more inclined to ever need a transplant in the future? Thank you. That's that person.
Well, no is the answer to that, really, Ray.
That's fine. See, there doesn't seem to be an obvious answer to this, David.
Ray, I mean, the whole point of it, this is outrageous arrogance and hubris on the behalf of Beaumont Hospital and the HSE to just dismiss this group of patients because it's a small group. I mean, it is mind-boggling lack of leadership, lack of class, lack of humanity. I can't understand, and the fact that they didn't feel they had any obligation to even inform them is mind-boggling.
It is. So since you retired in January, and I remember in April you said you had phoned the HSE that day to see what was going on and you didn't get a response or you couldn't get through or whatever. And have you spoken to anybody in power in the HSE since then?
I've met the Chief Medical Officer of the Department of Health, very good guy, and he's looking into it. But I mean, I've been down that road with Mary Harney, with Bertie Ahern, with all these guys in the past, and you get the pat on the back and you feel great going out, but I know that's bullshit. It has of no significance whatsoever. But if they're serious about pancreas transplant now, what they need to do, they need to select 2 guys who are prepared to go to the United States for a year to learn about not just the technique of stitching it in, but how to look after these patients and how to set up a clinic in the future. Okay, and in the interim, they need to look after the patients who have already been transplanted, and they need to take care of the patients who are on the list at the moment. The 5 who are suspended on top of that 8 because of the delay, they've been taken, they've got ill and are untransplantable at the moment, and any patients coming on the future. So they need to be treated in the UK. And then when the guys come back, having made the effort to train, rather than just say we can do it because we're great guys, when they have trained and actually are technically and intellectually capable of doing it, then you reopen the transplant program and anywhere else but Beaumont Hospital.
But you know, people are listening to this, David, now, and they're saying that, that the solution to the problem is sitting in front of me, and that's you.
Yeah.
And what do you say to that?
Well, I'm still prepared on the offer I made in the past. I think it would be difficult to do it in Beaumont because, all bridges have more or less been burnt there. But I would be happy to do it in, say, the Mater Hospital.
Okay.
The Mater Hospital have an empty floor that they're looking for people. I've spoken to people down there. They would welcome it with open arms. I think the entire kidney and pancreas should be moved out of Beaumont. They've been housed in a porta cabin for the last 5 years. It's not cherished.
Okay. So you're open to negotiations?
I am.
Right.
Yeah. And that's not the reason I'm doing this, right?
No,
I'm quite happy to actually fish.
Yes, in Cuba. Yes, I know.
Yeah.
I know, and you opted for early retirement.
Yeah,
and
yes.
We have to respect that. You were close to tears there. It's very tough on you.
It is.
What do you think is going to happen?
I have no idea, but I do know, I can't speak for other patients, but for myself on the list, it's not something that can be put on the long finger. Day to day, I can feel differences in my body. My body in general is getting weaker. Things I could do a year ago some are impossible to do now. Some are just a total struggle. My eyes, my kidneys, my heart, diabetes is affecting all this, and the problems I have in my diabetes, these swings, these passing outs, it's going to end up killing me if something isn't done soon. And not only from the diabetes, the diabetes causes these pass outs that I'm getting. If it's not the diabetes that kills me, it'll be one of the falls. I've had numerous falls, and I cannot understand how I haven't been paralysed or worse. I've tumbled down from the top of the stairs with a low blood sugar, resulting in...
And does Leo Varadkar know that you exist?
Yes.
He does?
Yes, he does.
He knows your name?
Yeah, back in March, I went through a very bad patch. For a week, I was passing out every day. I was passing out 3 and 4 times a day. I had one particular fall where I ended up in Beaumont Hospital with a rotator cuff tear in my shoulder. I'd had a low blood sugar at the top of the stairs, lost consciousness, tumbled down the stairs, found at the bottom of the stairs by my 2 children. Now, apart from the rotator cuff tear, I had numerous superficial injuries, I was black and blue. I had to go to the National Concert Hall that night. My son was playing in the National Concert Hall with his school. I had to go to the concert hall that night, black and blue, with my arm in a sling. And after that, I was going to go because it was my son's concert,
Yes.
but I was mortified.
Yeah.
I can imagine what people were thinking. But after that, my mum wrote a letter into Leo Varadkar. She didn't just, she wrote it to Leo Varadkar in the Dáil. She wrote it to his constituency office and also to his home address. That would have been in March. On the 5th of May, she got an acknowledgement from his private secretary stating that he would forward the letter on to Leo Varadkar. That was the 5th of May.
Okay, right.
I haven't heard a thing since.
Right. I had a kidney and pancreas transplant on December 14, 2003, performed by David Hickey. Without that transplant, my wife would be a widow now. What a brave person Ciara is. Shame on those responsible for this, says Brian. And David Hickey, legend as a footballer, legend as a surgeon, legend as a man. I was in Beaumont in 1997 being treated by Mr. O'Donnell, the haematologist. Some of Mr. Hickey's patients were in the same room as me, and when he came in to see them, he always spent 10 or 15 minutes talking to me. He was a hero to me as a teenager, as a footballer, but having met him in Beaumont, he became a hero as a man. And I used to idolise David as a Dublin footballer, like the way kids idolise Ronaldo today. He passed the ball with the inside of his foot as opposed to the easier option of the hand pass. I idolise him more today for his non-passing of the book. The man is a national treasure. There you go. See,
You're left speechless, Ray, and I think that's the general reaction around the world. I mean, it's so bad, it's untrue.
Yeah.
Can I just say there to anybody out there who is listening to this and, who, I don't mean just feels bad for me, but for the other patients on the list, the other patients trying to get onto the list, the other patients who have been transplanted, please, and I plead, I really plead with anybody out there, please don't sit on your hands. There's a website, www.uplift.ie, and on this website there's a petition in place. This petition is to Liam Duffy, CEO of Beaumont Hospital, to try reopen the pancreas programme. Now maybe it may not reopen in Beaumont, but we need it reopened somewhere. So please log on and sign this petition.
Okay, and we'll put the details of that up on our website.
It's only open a week. There's 9,800 hits already on that.
Need more.
Yeah, need more, Ray.
Okay, David, I'm sure we'll be talking again, and Ciara, we'll talk again as well. Thanks to you both for coming in.